Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy. Trying to make the world seem a little more normal. One day at a time. It never happens, but we try, and that's all that matters. It counts to somebody, I'm sure, somewhere. But anyway, as always, I bring a guest to help on this quest. And my guest today is Helen Gretchen Jones, Intuitive Death Doula, which I love that title, and Channeler. I swear to God, Intuitive Death Doula is such a badass title. That's all I've been thinking for the last week. It's such a badass title. But how you doing tonight, Gretchen?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm happy to be
My,
here.
yeah, my pleasure. Always happy to have people who have interesting jobs in the paranormal spiritual world. It's always a fun conversation. But that kind of brings me to my first question, I guess. What got you into this realm of the spiritual world?
I have always had a connection to spirit my entire life for as long as I can remember. I just, as a teenager, early teenage years, like 12, 13, 14, if I would share it with somebody, it would be usually dismissed. So I kept it to myself for a long time. But when my father died in 2015, that's what was the catalyst that launched me into working with the dying community. But as far as spirituality and having a connection to spirit, that's been a lifelong thing for me.
Yeah, that age-old thing, that age-old stigma of, oh, there's nothing else besides what, this little book tells us. But you gotta love it. You gotta love it. I mean, it's just honestly, it's one of the biggest themes in this podcast is just the fact that people got shut down because of the time they were brought up in. And it's a shame. It really is. I don't focus on it too much on the show, but I mean, it's just, actually, I've got on rants about it, but it's just it's a sign of the times. That's all it really is. And it's these days. I was just actually talking about this with a guest last night. These days, it seems like the fourth dimensional people are shining, and they're out there everywhere. Social media, you name it. You can find a psychic with a basically one swipe of your phone these days, which is incredible. Incredible. Something I never thought I would see in my life. But so let's go back a little though. When you said you started working on the death duel side of things when your grandfather passed, if I heard you correctly.
My dad, my
Your
father.
your father, sorry. So how did that come? Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't mean how did he die, but how did you awaken that side of you? I should say.
So I always, like I said earlier, have a connection to spirit. And at the time when my father transitioned in 2015, I had already started a regular practice of connecting to my team in spirit, who I call A Team. And 5 months before my father passed, A Team gave me a, sort of a prophetic vision where I saw my father passing away with the number 5 flashing above his head. It was a whole it happened so quickly, but it felt like I was having that vision for a few minutes, but it really was probably only less than a minute. And when it actually happened, that's when I started questioning a little bit more about, okay, so they gave me this information. Am I supposed to change it? Was I supposed to step in? Was I supposed to make a change that shifted whether or not he was going to die or not? I now realize that that's not the case. As I started working more and more with the dying community, I recognize that when spirit gives me a heads up, a little ballpark, and when someone's going to pass, it really is just sort of to let me be available to the family and to the patient. It isn't really about stopping it. The soul has already decided to pass on.
Which actually, okay. Which brings me to a good question then. Do you believe in fate?
I do. I believe that we have free will, and I also believe we have fate. I believe before we come into these physical bodies, we have certain things that we definitely want to have happen and experience. But how we get there is up to us with our free choice.
See, I always actually okay. Because of what we were talking about before we went on live, you may appreciate the metaphor I use for this. I like to look at fate. as literally the Disney Hercules movie had it, where there are these strands and some of them are golden, and the golden ones can't get cut. They're going to happen when they're going to happen, regardless. The other ones can be ripped and cut as we demonstrate our free will to some degree. To me, that's kind of how it works. That's the image I get in my head when I think about fate. I mean, classic, but
Okay, I'd like to add that's something what movie was that again?
Hercules, the Disney
Herc
version.
Okay, I'm gonna have to watch it because what's so interesting is one of the ways that my team and spirit connects with me is I will see strands of golden light, like, looks like little threads coming off of people's head and shoulders. And this is part of the intuitive side. So when someone is talking about, should I take a job in New York, for example, and if I see that golden thread light up, I know it's the strongest probability of many possibilities. Those threads, I think, at least that's my experience so far, are potential paths or possibilities. And the brighter they light up, I think that's where we've put a lot of our energy into thinking about it and co creating it and manifesting it. And I think that's why they light up so bright, but that would be the strongest probability of all these possibilities. So that's how I see it as these golden threads that come off of people's head and shoulders. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, this is the animated version they did back in '97, if I'm not mistaken. But it's yeah, I mean, it's classic Greek literature. The three fates, old haggard ladies sitting there with scissors trying to cut the threads of people's lives, basically. So it's that old good Greek mythology, you know. So many
Yeah.
classics, but I mean, that's how I always viewed fate. And I mean, unfortunately, I mean, I guess fortunately and unfortunately, death is part of fate in a way,
Mhm.
because we are all fated to die at a. Is it fated that we die at a certain time in a certain place? Maybe for some, maybe for
Sometimes.
all. Who know? Who knows? I mean, I had a palm reader on a couple weeks ago, and she looked at my hands and she's like, "You're gonna live a long, long life," and I'm like, "You can tell that by looking at someone's hands." And I mean, it kind of like I felt like that's part of fate, though. Like I've always considered myself. Well, I consider myself immortal for a long time because that typical young man attitude. But I always still think to this day that I will live a long life. It's kind of like something I just feel deep down in my head, like it's just gonna happen, and probably gonna be a suffering old bastard by the time it's done. But I mean, it's I'm gonna live a long life, and I feel like that's fate. I feel like that's was determined before I was born, even that it was just gonna be that way. And I mean, it could tie into reincarnation too, but that's a whole. Well, actually, as a death duel, I gotta ask: have you seen signs of reincarnation when dealing with on the end of the spirit realm, kind of?
Uh, yes, but not in the traditional sense of reincarnation. I do believe in that our souls are eternal and that this is not the only experience we get to have. So when I speak to my team in spirit and I refer to because I'm also I certified in hypnotherapy through past life regressions, but they always, when I was getting certified, they would correct the teachings at the end of the day and they would say, okay, you are one life, you have many experiences. So it isn't like a past life and a future life. They're experiences that my one life is having, my soul is having. So, and they're all happening simultaneously. So, based on the choices that we make and the directions that we choose to go, reincarnation is happening, but it's kind of happening all right now, past and future, based on the choices we are making in the now moment. So, yes, in that sense, reincarnation, yes, we get to have different experiences and different bodies, perhaps on different planets, that sort of thing, but it's not all happening in a linear fashion, past lives, future lives.
See, I swear to God, this is synchronization always, because you are not the first. There was a guest literally in the last couple weeks that said she literally she has the ability to tap into like a what she calls her mirror room, and she can see all her lives at once, like, and she said the same thing, that it's not past lives or future lives, it's all happening in different dimensions at the same
Yes,
time.
yes. That's been
Which,
my experience too.
but see, it's just it blows my mind that two people have told me that in such a short time, when before that I always thought it was linear, like it's always the way I thought about it. And now, God, see, this is why I do a podcast. This kind of stuff just makes my brain tingle. Like it's, oh.
Well,
And
I had a patient, actually, Mr. Arjuna, and he was Hindu, so he very much believed in reincarnation, and his wife
yeah,
had died 30 years before he did, and according to his faith, she should have already reincarnated. So when she was showing up at his bedside before he died, for a whole year before he died, actually, it was very distressing to him because it contradicted the teachings from his faith. And so we had to work through what reincarnation could look like if we had to shift perspectives on it. Perhaps it was a vision. He was very comforted by her being there, but he wanted her to be happily reincarnated already. So we had to navigate those, contradictions of his faith right there towards the end.
in interesting. I mean, and yeah, and I also love that you said that it could be other planets too, because I mean I've
Mhm.
heard that one a lot. I've heard that one a lot. I mean, extraterrestrial worlds play a lot into the reincarnation discussions I've had on this show, and those conversations come up a lot. And basically, I mean, I people always get kicked out of this, but I basically consider that reincarnation is basically controlled from where we go when we pass, which is basically a DMV in the sky, in space, whatever you want to call that area. But it's basically a DMV, and we're basically waiting for our ticket to be pulled again. So that's the way I look at it. It's I actually can literally see it in my head, just standing in line there with the ticket in hand, waiting for your number to be called. But
Oh.
the good old DMV. But so yeah, I mean that's how I look at it. And I meant to say this earlier, but I love that you call them the A team. That is so freaking classic. is, is there a Mr. T one of them? I gotta ask.
I know. I pity the fool. No, it's, actually, the A team was before my time a little bit, and when I started calling my team in spirit A team, my husband thought it was a reference to, the fighters A team. And so it made me not like the name I had given them, and so I told them I thought their name was lame, and I was ready to change it to something different, and I wanted it to be something that represented more of a collective, something that meant oneness or, more singular. And so I told them I wanted to change their name and I would be looking for a sign from them. And I ended my little meditation with them and left the house to go take my cat to the vet. And just as I was pulling into the vet, a temporary dumpster was being delivered, blocking all the parking spaces. And in big, bold, white letters on the side of the dumpster, it said A team. And right in that moment, I realized, okay, A does mean singular or one in our English language. And it also implies that we are a team and they need me as much as I need them. So A team stuck. It's what it is now.
I mean, it's see, I didn't think. Well, reruns happen. I didn't think that. I know A team is not your generation. I know that because a, it's before I mean, it's before my generation too. Like I know it's not in your generation,
No,
but
we're probably
reruns
the
happen.
same or you're probably younger than me for sure.
Well, yeah, based on when we were comparing kids' ages in the beginning, yeah, I would say oh, maybe, I don't know. People have kids at all different ages. You can't tell anymore. But yeah, I mean, and it's cool. A team's always cool. I don't care what anybody says. But so what is I guess I should ask this for people who don't know. What is a death doula by definition?
So a death doula is a helper. A death doula is someone who helps someone to transition to the other side holistically without doing the medication part. That would be where nurses and doctors come in. I think death doula is a relatively new niche area of work because with the shifts and changes in our healthcare system, nurses used to be who sat bedside with patients and used to help them and guide them and help the families. But with the changes in the healthcare system, the nurses have so much paperwork and a lot of red tape, and they're unable to dedicate that much time to sitting with patients. So now a death doula who doesn't accept insurance, right? So once you start accepting insurance, there's been this big push with the death doula movement to not have it covered by insurance because once you do that, now we're being pulled into all the paperwork and the red tape and the liabilities. And right now, it really is such a simple gift to go in with time and just sit there with the patients and be there available for the families as well. So that is what a death doula does.
Yeah, I mean it, and I mean we've all heard about doulas from the birth perspective for a while now, but yeah, it makes sense to have. I mean, you want a guide coming in, want a guide going out. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, it's death's always been a it's always been a fascinating topic since the beginning of, like, well, civilized culture, I'll say. I don't think we thought about it much as cavemen, but it's always been a topic since people started thinking, like, what happens when we die? Like, how does it work? And it's scary. I mean, it's scary. I've watched a couple relatives die, and it's just they not know. I mean, well, some of them are religious, and they thought they knew what was coming next, and that gave them comfort. So, I mean, I guess that's one place religion actually does have a good stay. I won't say that about a lot of things with religion, but but I mean, oh, actually, that gave me a question, but I'll get to that in a minute because we do have a listener question. And I'd like to get those out as soon as possible. Jessica says, "Would you say deja vu?" I hate English. Oh, would you say? I think it means. Would you say deja vu is the same action or activity done in another timeline, and our soul recognizing these moments again?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so in my book, under frequently asked questions, one of them is, "Can you explain déjà vu?" And it is probably my longest answer, but I'll try to summarize it. The way my team in spirit um, explained déjà vu, and this is going to be a little out there, but apparently we are just a fragment of ourselves in our physical body, that we are a multifaceted, sort of multidimensional being, and we are always connected to our higher self or our higher soul. So, just the way, like, if you were to ask, where does an atom go when it disappears just in that instant, like it's flickering on and off? We are always kind of going on and off too, and staying in a constant connection to our higher self. So, your higher self and your personality make a plan, make a path kind of where you are, and you kind of check in with your higher self subconsciously on a regular basis. And whenever you find yourself doing even a mundane thing like unloading the dishwasher, and that feels like a deja vu moment, it was just like a check in, like, okay, you're right where you're supposed to be. It isn't necessarily another dimension, but you're checking in with your higher self, which is in another dimension based on where you're supposed to be for your ultimate goal, even if it's a mundane chore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it
And
makes
it
sense
goes
to me.
even
And
more like with the whole flickering, like where the atoms go when they where our whole bodies are made up of those atoms. So it's a almost like a quantum physics type of response, this deja vu. But
makes sense. I mean, deja vu and like the whole theory of, well, not theory, the practice of premonitions have always intrigued me to no end because I've been having premonitions since I was a kid. So never anything important, of course, because that'd be actually useful. But basic stupid premonitions of conversations, random small things, nothing of importance, which always annoyed me. But I wanted to be freaking wow. How did I explain? Nicolas Cage and freaking next. Like that's what I wanted to be. Like show me what's gonna happen that I could say I could actually stop. But and oh, actually, I like that. Bubble says that is a cool way to look at it. If we can check out, then we can check in too.
absolutely, yes. And our higher selves and our higher souls are in another dimension. So in that way, we are checking into another dimension. At least that's the way my team explained it. I would love to hear other theories on deja vu because just because I'm interpreting that message from my team in spirit doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way. I really believe that we are limitless.
Yeah, I mean, I always felt deja vus were tied to past lives in some way. Because I mean, you go to a big city like New York City or Boston, and like you see like a famous landmark, and you feel like you've been there before, but it's
Mhm.
you like you're young. It's your first time there, and it's just like, why do I feel like I've been here? I mean, it has to be from another life or something in our heads that makes it click. I mean, I don't think just seeing it on pictures or TV would do the same thing. I don't think it'd be the same feeling because I
Yeah.
mean,
How do you explain like small things though? Like, oh, I feel like I was just unloading the dishwasher, like just like this, a small chore.
I think chores are just so mundane that we don't want to do them, so we feel like we just did them no matter how. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I take out the garbage. I'm just like, didn't I just take this out like an hour ago? Like, no, it's been a day or two, but yeah, okay. I just feel like it was that short time ago, but that's just the mundane life that we all live in the most part. But so, since you've been around a lot of people at their time of death, I got a two-part question for you, and I think it's gonna give some good stories and good answers here. What what was the most, I want to say important, but that's not the word I want to say. What's been the most profound death experience you have witnessed, and what has been the most creepy you have witnessed? Like, I kind of want to know if it's like ghosts and you see like the angels and demons coming out of the floor and ceiling and stuff. Like,
Okay, the most profound, the most transformative, is one that I included in my book, and it's a little bit out there, so it might take a minute for me to explain a little bit. The
we
patient's
got time.
name
Go ahead.
the patient's name is Mr. Virgil. Of course, I changed their names. Mr. Virgil uh, was a NODA patient. NODA stands for No One Dies Alone, and it's a hospital-based program where people have maybe they never had kids, maybe their family can't afford to travel in, maybe they were jerks and burned all those bridges and nobody wants to be with them. For whatever reason, he's dying alone. And I am a volunteer for NODA, and I went in to sit with him. I should first say that when I decided to volunteer for them, I went and looked online and all the good time slots were filled up. Like, nobody wants the midnight to 3 a.m. shift, for example.
Oh,
Um, so I
well,
I told Spirit, "Okay, if I'm supposed to be there, then you're gonna have to wake me up at 4:30 and I'll sign up for the 6 a.m. shift." And they woke me up at 4:28. I didn't set an alarm or anything, and I was like, "Okay." And I woke up to the sound of the song Colors playing in my head by the Black Pumas. And, I really like that song, but I was just kind of playing it was about the fields and the meadows and all the colors that he as he was walking, and, I was like, "Okay, guys, I'll get up." I sign up for the shift, I leave the house, I turn the radio on the car, and the same song is playing, Colors by the Black Pumas, and I'm like, "Okay, this is gonna be something kind of important." I continue to the hospital, I get there, I sit with Mr. Virgil, and as I'm holding his hand, and this type of thing happens frequently where the hospital room will shift and become a different space. Um, and I become aware that I'm in two places at once. I am in the hospital holding Mr. Virgil's hand, and I'm also in this incredibly gorgeous field of flowers next to a forest with a blue sky. It's incredible, and I'm in both places at once. The when this happens, like the flowers, for example, they are bigger and brighter than anything I have ever seen on earth, and they make a noise like a humming or it's some kind of musical tone that doesn't have a beat. It's just this beautiful musical quality to them. Everything kind of does, the trees too. So I'm sitting there in the hospital, and all of a sudden I notice that in the field of flowers with me is Mr. Virgil. So now both of us are in two worlds at once and he's staring at the forest. I have a knowing that after we walk through the forest, I'm going to see his welcome party, which is very, very frequent at time of death. I witness people having all sorts of welcome home parties. And he was nervous to go in. He didn't want to go into the forest. A being of light comes out of the forest, and it's me. Only I'm blue and white. And I have never, ever had that experience before where I am literally in three places at once. I am the observer in the field of flowers, I am physically in the hospital room, and I am now the being of light that literally leads Mr. Virgil through the forest as a shared death experience to his welcome home party. He even gets scared halfway through. I become even bigger. I scoop him up, I hold him. I cradle him like a baby before putting him back down, and the whole place turned into like a field of stars briefly while that happened. And then when I put him back down, he asked the me of light, "What's going to happen to my nephew and my uncle?" And then the me of light projects potential life outcomes and potentialities of those two people. But when that happened, I was not allowed to witness it. I shot back to the observer in the field of flowers. And when he felt that that was okay, he was ready to continue on. So that was the most profound experience where I literally experienced myself as a multidimensional being in 3 different places at once. And having these shared death experiences at the bedside, seeing people standing outside their bodies right before they transition, all of that is normal for me. So, but not having myself be in three different places at once. That was a new thing that I look forward to having more experiences like that.
That honestly sounds so amazing. And I mean, I would lie with the whole seeing yourself as a glowing being. That kind of gives me Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban vibes. Just saying, but that's what I am a pop culture junkie, so that's what came to my mind when I heard that. But it's amazing. It sounds to actually have a view of what's like in the afterlife is what most people dream of when they start thinking about it. When they get to mature, when they start getting mature, when they start hitting it towards adulthood, and they think about death. Actually, it's that's what everybody wants. They want to know what the afterlife is like. And but I do have a follow-up question to that. But I'll let this is a good question. I'll let Jessica get it out first. Do you need to do anything to place yourself in the field, such as breathing exercises or really both
Marijuana, or does it just happen for
marijuana?
you?
I mean, I mean, marijuana before anything sounds good, but but yeah, that's a good question. So I kind of am curious about the answer.
Okay. So, I sit with my team in spirit a lot. And so before I go in to sit with any patient, remove the word meditation. There's so many hangups around that word. People are like, I can never meditate. It isn't about that. It's about connecting to your inner wisdom. We'll call it that. So I do sit down and make a conscious effort to some people like to call it prayer. Some people say setting an intention. Some people call it meditating, but to sit and connect to that inner wisdom within yourself. That's all that I do. And I'm also open to whatever experience is going to happen. I welcome it. I want it. I look forward to it. And I think with practice, and that's what I have in the book as well, with practice, everybody can connect to their higher self. Everybody can connect to their team and spirit and have a shared death experience. This is not something that's reserved for only special cases. Everyone has that ability that you're born with it. You are a spirit inside a body, so you can connect to spirit.
Makes I mean, you can. It makes sense. It really does. It's funny because my grandmother always said that when she saw her what I believe it was her father-in-law. Yeah, when she no, not her father-in-law. Yeah, it had to be her father. When she saw her father die because he died in their living room, um, that she saw this small ball of light leave his body and just float like through the ceiling and away, basically. And when I was younger, I never freaking believed her. I was like, yeah, okay. But as I started doing this podcast and more things opened their eyes to me, I basically was like, all right, maybe she saw what she saw because that's what she believed because of religion. Maybe that's why she saw what she saw. Maybe it was like a implanted thing in her head at that point, and that's what it looked like to her because that's what her beliefs allowed her to see.
The ball
I
of
mean,
light?
yeah, I mean, because it kind of is like oh, when someone dies, their soul leaves their body and they go to heaven. Like, and that's what it would look like. I would think, like to a lot of people back in the this had to be the God no 40s 50s. So, I mean, the people back then who were super religious because that's the way it was. That's what I think their mind would want them to see because
I
it'd
don't
be a
know,
comfort to
Jeremy.
them.
I frequently see spirits as balls of light too. I really do.
Well, I'm not saying the ball of light is what, just the fact that it goes up, like the fact it goes up to heaven, which I personally don't like the term heaven. I don't like the term hell because that's not what these places are. They're not what Bibles and Qurans and freaking Torahs and everything else say they are. They're different from what I've been told. They're completely different. But the question I was going to ask is, are well, I'm assuming every death experience is different to some degree. I'm sure there's been similar ones, but are there ever ones where they actually like it's kind of like you're not welcome? Like, is there ever ones where they kind of like something tries to push you away from it?
I have never had, an experience where I was not welcome. I have never had a demonic experience or something scary or what we would perceive as evil. I do have a theory on evil. I struggle with that word, and I'm still working through it. I'm a work in progress too. I don't know that evil actually exists. I think maybe it's a level of misunderstanding or a level of hurt or pain that someone is experiencing. So as far as like a negative experience at time of death, I haven't had that experience at this yet. And
No, that's
I was gonna share something earlier from the earlier question that Jessica had, and that was, when she was saying, "What do you need to do to kind of get into that space?" I think when I was saying earlier that everyone can do this, there's a well-known medium, and she one time described it as everyone can connect to spirit just like everyone can play the piano. Some people sit down and they just play Bach. Some people sit down and they play chopsticks. Some people have to study years and years and years before they can play Bach. And then some people have to study years and years and years, and all they can ever do is play chopsticks. And even people who don't have hands can still play with their feet and their nose. So you can always connect to spirit, and just based on how much practice that you do, and then you start to gauge your discernment with the messages that you're getting, but everyone can connect no matter what. It just some people are more gifted at it than others, and some people have to practice a little longer to achieve that. But I don't want it to sound like in any way that you cannot connect on your own, because you can.
yeah, I fully believe you can. And I mean, it's like me with meditation. I'm over here playing chopsticks with meditation for the last 2 years, 2 years trying to get it to work. And I mean, I recently have been told by podcasters I work with that they think I have ADHD and I just never got diagnosed. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's why I can't meditate because my mind is always jumping down wormholes constantly. So maybe I don't know, but I, I mean, so there ever any sign that religion is somewhat right about the whole afterlife of the angels, the demons, and just anything to do with heaven or hell? Like, is there any signs of that ever really show?
Okay, so I've never had an experience around, hell, and I've never had an experience around demons or anything like that. However, I have experienced angelics, and the only way I can explain that is I struggled with that word too because has such a heavy religious meaning behind it, but I have no other word to explain it. These beings feel, huge. They feel so tall, and if you put them in a room, it's like they can fill the entire corner. You raise the ceiling, it's like they would just fill that space even more, and they have a protective energy. They're a little more difficult for me to connect into because they are just almost observers and protectors kind of feeling. Could they be, an other dimensional beings? Yes. Yes, they can. But as far as what we in our English language call a being of light that is a protector, that is a guide, that is hands off until asked. Well, we have a term for that, and we call them angels. Do they have wings? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but that's not the important part, quite frankly. It's how they're serving humanity. So, yes, I believe our term for them right now is angels or angelics, and I have experienced them. I have also experienced the image of Jesus. I've also done the Buddha image. So I think these are when I'm working specifically with clients. So when those people are coming through, those beings, whether or not they are really Jesus, I don't know. Whether or not, but that's who they're presenting as. And perhaps that's to help the other person who needs to hear this message be able to connect because that's where they are. But I have experienced that. And what if heaven is just the other side? That's our word for it, you know?
Yeah.
So I sometimes it's just vocabulary.
I mean, I agree to some. I agree. I mean, I've heard a lot about angels possibly being extraterrestrials, possibly being, as you said, interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial creatures, I guess. But oh, actually, she did answer your question to a degree, Jessica, but not. I asked. It kind of got me on something. Could these beings be what the past cultures call gods and deities? And I mean, I don't know. I am really into like the old gods, you know, the whole Zeus, Odin type thing. And have you ever seen anything similar to that? Like, 'cause I'm trying to figure out if maybe maybe what presents itself is what people believed in when they're dying.
Correct. Or what they need to hear in an intuitive reading that helps. The most important thing I have found, because I'm not willing to say it is absolutely Jesus and that's it, because I don't wanna limit anything. But I believe that when these beings present themselves with a certain appearance, it is so that how their message will be the most well received. That person really had a connection with Jesus that I was working with. So having Jesus come in was something that she was able to really hear that message. So old school deities, well, I believe that if I'm working with someone who has a real connection to Odin, well, then maybe I would see Odin come in because that person needs to hear that. I believe that energy flows where we need it to go. And if we're putting a lot of energy into Odin, well, then we're going to co create Odin because that's what we're doing with the universe. We're co creating all the time, every part of our lives. And if Odin is something that's important to us, then we're going to co create that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not seeing Zeus pop in, because then you might want to not drink the wine or meat he's offering. Just saying. Just saying. But yeah, he freaking damn Bill Cosby of Greek culture. Swear to God. But uh, so damn it, I had a good one, a good question too, and I just freaking lost it. It'll come back to me. It always does. But it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. So you did write a book about your experiences, as you mentioned earlier. What made you want to write a book? Because I always find with people in the spiritual realm, they don't set out to do things just to write a book about it one day. It's usually something else that inspires them.
um, I never have ever wanted to write a book. That's never been anything on my radar ever. In fact, I don't even feel, even now, qualified to write a book. That always feels like, someone who's just super highly educated, majored in lit somewhere, like that's an author or someone who had a really just harrowing experience in life. But I woke up a few years ago. It was a June morning, and I heard a voice say, "You're going to write a book." And I knew it was my team in spirit. And I was just like, what would I even write about? And they said, write what you know. Well, I don't I don't know a lot about anything. I know a little about a lot of things, but nothing that would make me an expert in anything. But then I started recognizing that probably the most transformative experiences that I've ever had and continue to have are at the bedside of dying patients. They're spiritual, they're beautiful, they are teaching moments. And so I decided I'd already been journaling it for years, so I whipped out those old journals, found some of my favorite stories, and as I continued writing, more and more experiences were happening, and I included those too. I mean, I had to pick my favorite ones. There's so many I left out, but that is how the whole book part came about. It was writing what I know.
Which I mean, that just leaves you playing for sequels. Just saying. But
It's
I mean,
true.
it's funny because I mean, I've actually been teasing on this show for the last month or so that I have to write. I've been told I will write a book eventually. Like I've had a couple mediums say, yeah, I will be writing a book in the next 5 years, and then more after that. But I'm just kind of like same as you. I was like, what the hell am I gonna write a book about? And I'm like,
Well, have you thought about it? What would you write a book about?
oh, I mean, the only thing that actually makes sense to me is to write my theories on the paranormal and have it be an ever evolving masterpiece that new editions come out of every 5 years with new things I learned. I mean, that's kind of the premise of it I would come up with because I was the same way. I'm like, what the hell do I know enough about to write? I'm like 90s and early 2000s wrestling. Okay, I could do that. But I mean, I was like, all right, you know what? I actually probably could write a damn because some of my theories in the paranormal are complicated. Some are very, very out there, and kind of makes sense though. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it has to happen eventually. I feel like that's the way I end up making money off my podcast eventually is by I could bring in revenue that way, and I feel like that's how it's supposed to happen. And I feel like it would open the eyes of a lot of people. I feel like that's the point of this. Besides just getting people's voices out there like yours, who are in this world, I'm supposed to use my words to put those voices out there even more. I mean, God, I probably would have to go back and listen to 500 episodes of the show by that point just to remember everything that was said on my show at every point. But it'd be a task I wouldn't mind doing if I had an end goal for it. So I don't know. It's interesting in a way. But for your book, I gotta ask: were there any stories that you left out purposefully? Like, are there any stories that like you didn't want to put in the book because of something about them, or because your team told you not to put that story in?
No, there were no stories that I felt, should not be in, because it didn't match an agenda or an idea or a theme that I was going for. I as the book started to unfold, I would start a chapter of, like, someone's death, and then another chapter or a preceding chapter to that would be a lesson that I learned through this process of helping people die, and then I would have a supporting deathbed story, and then I would have another lesson, another teaching, and it would be another supporting deathbed story. So, really, the stories were selected based on my teachings, that I have acquired over the years of doing this, but ultimately, there aren't any that are not worthy. Everyone has such a unique death and a unique story. And there were some that I wish I could have included. You just gotta call it quits at some point, you know? So, yeah, there's a lot of really beautiful deaths, and they're all really beautiful.
See, I mean, well, actually, Jessica said it earlier. I didn't post the comment, but she said like that death is beautiful, but the physical act of dying is the part that's not beautiful. And I mean, how do you feel about that?
Uh, I mean, correct. The physical part is the part that we in our as human personalities that we struggle to watch the most with our loved ones. The body is like a vehicle, and we step into this vehicle, and some of us take it really fast, some of us take it really slow, some of us take it in for regular maintenance, some of us just drive it into the ground. But in the end, when the vehicle starts to putter out, we don't have to stay in it. We can step out of that vehicle and watch it coast to a stop from an observer standpoint. And that has been my experience almost every single time. The person steps out of their body before they take their final breath and they are observing. And that final breath, when we're looking at our loved ones struggling to breathe, all that is the human body shutting down, the earthly body and all of its natural processes shutting down to return to the earth. But who we are, our soul, is standing outside the body, not experiencing that suffering, but observing and feeling the love and feeling the compassion that our loved ones around us are also sharing.
Which I mean, that's yeah, it does make sense we leave the body before the final breath because that's probably our spirit's way of saying, yeah, I don't want to experience this. Let's get out of
Right.
here. But have but that made me you made me think with this, and because I've had not a lot, but a few NDEers on this podcast, not near death experiencers. And have you ever been called like for any of the visitations you've done, I guess, and the person was supposed to pass away, but they did and then came back?
Someone else asked me this question, and no, I have if I'm there, they're dying. Like, it's like it's like, I'm the angel of death sort of thing. I'm coming in, then that's the case. Um No, but I will say that leaving the body, before the final breath, I think is often supported by the stories of many NDEers because right before the car accident hits, they were like, "Oh, I popped out of my body," and then they come back into their body and the accident has happened, but they don't experience that, the impact and the trauma from that oftentimes. So I think that that is also supported by we don't have to be there for that final last breath. We can be observing.
Yeah, it's 100% supported, and I've had a couple where they're actually just in a like, they're in a hospital and they're above their body. Like, it's just
Yeah.
the classic "I was above my body" type experience, and that we've heard about. We've heard on, paranormal documentary shows for the last 30 years, but
Right, and they're jump
it
starting their heart and they're doing CPR and they're
yeah.
not experiencing that. They're observing it, and that's yeah, that's the same thing.
It's funny though, because a lot of them talk about they have a choice that they had to make about whether to go back or not. Like, which kinda I don't know. I mean, it's the free will aspect, but it kinda works against my fate theory, and I'm like, I don't like it.
Well, I'll actually touch on that a little bit. So, I believe that there are sort of like maybe timelines, I don't know if I like the word parallel dimensions, but why not? I mean, we don't have I can't come up with a better word for it right now. There's probably a time frame that's unfolding in which you are already dead and a time frame where you die shortly and then you're in one right now where you're going to live a long, long life. But if you think of us, we are multi-dimensional. We are there's so many parts of fragment selves of us experiencing, and it kind of we're one whole, but we're experiencing all these other little moments in time as we perceive it, not linear. So, and remember, death is not a bad thing. It's really not. It's just moving on to a different way of being. So, in an area where you maybe have already died, maybe that was your golden cords that you talked about earlier. You said some of them can't be cut. I don't know. Spirit tells me that there are some times where we make exit points. Sometimes before we come into a life, we give ourselves several, but those exit points that we don't take continue to still unfold in another layer of time.
Which, I mean, it makes sense. I am a huge believer in the multiversal theory. So, and I mean,
Yeah.
and I mean, what you describe, it's exactly what you described. Like in the multiverse, a timeline can go off and branch into two different timelines until a decision's made, or until something happens. So,
I like
and
that
then
theory. I think it's a good one.
thank you, MCU. but, yeah. Oh, oh God damn it! Just had another thing about that. I gotta start writing down my questions when I have too many at once. God, it's it keeps happening tonight. I don't know why. My mind's just
It's that
ADHD.
ADHD.
I was gonna say that's exactly what it is. So, NDE. Ah, damn it! I should answer that one first because I wouldn't have forgotten about the NDE. But do you know? Oh, that's what I was gonna ask. It was about the notas when you go to the "No One Dies Alone" candidates. Do they usually Are you usually welcomed by that person, or do they actually, like, put up a fight about, like, wanting to be left alone? Because some of the jerks out there that push everybody else away in their lives, they do it on purpose for their own reasons.
It's a good question. NODA usually asks for volunteers when the person is perceivably in the last 72 hours of their life. And by that time, most people are moving into a level of being unconscious.
Oh,
So it's not like hospice patients where they could push you away. And I've had patients push me away and I have to kind of work my way into their life a little bit. But with the NODA patients, they can't protest, at least not in a physical way. They're already moving into the unconscious space.
which, I mean, okay, yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Because I was like, there's gotta be some people out there who just don't want anybody around when they're dying. I've known miserable fucks like that, I'll say, miserable
Yeah.
fucks, like, they just are people who don't want anybody around ever, and I I
I was assigned a patient like that in hospice, and it took me, several weeks before, he stopped dismissing me. Before I mean, I was never really welcomed, maybe a few times right at the end, but most of the time when he was through with me, he would fake narcolepsy and just pretend he fell asleep. So, I do it all the time now to be funny, like with my husband or something, I'll be like, but I learned it from my patient.
which actually, that's actually a good question right there. Because doing this line of work and having kids, how did you explain to your kids when they were younger what you did for a living?
Um, well, I didn't start helping people die until 2015, so and my kids
Oh,
are a little
okay.
bit older. My daughter's always, I guess she would be, she was born in 2011, so I guess that would be more on par for her. My son's in college, so I don't know. They both have a little bit of a spiritual side to them. My husband's extremely logical. He's very science-based. So I think they take a little bit of what I do and a little bit of what he does, and then they'll find their own happy medium.
Ah, you're creating me's. That was my mindset. I that's why I never that's why I became agnostic at one not agnostic, an atheist at one point in high school and like started questioning my like religion to my family. 'Cause I'm like, I am a science-minded person. That's why I always said I'm science-minded and I need to see proof of things before I can believe in them. So
Yep.
I mean that was my thinking a half a life ago, but I am now agnostic and just don't really want to put names to anything because I don't know what exactly to believe. I have theories, but that's a whole another 5 hour conversation. So
Well,
we won't go into those.
I will share that
Oh,
atheists and agnostics are the easiest people to transition as a death doula, because they don't have anything contradicted at end of life. They're just I mean, if you're atheist, then something spiritual starts to happen, then you're pleasantly surprised. If you're agnostic, then you're just open and curious to, well, what's it gonna be? And you're waiting. So agnostics and atheists are definitely, at least open-minded enough to see how it's gonna unfold without getting distressed over it contradicting their religious beliefs.
see, if I was you, actually, I was just thinking about this. If I was you, I would totally be going like to around the world, like trying to witness different cultures' deaths. Just, I mean, I would go to Egypt and see if like Sobek and Anubis show up. Like
Yeah, that's a really good
that
idea. Maybe I'll start thinking about something like that.
I mean, not that I exactly want to see a crocodile walking on 2 legs that's huge walk into a room, but things could be interesting. I might need a new chair after that one. But that's the images I've seen, the images they draw of him. My God, it's scary. But which I don't know. And I mean the Asian cultures alone have to have some interesting ones. They have
Yeah.
to with what they believe, with what their paranormal beliefs. But so, what would you say is the best advice for anybody? I mean, because we all are going to face death at some point. What's the best way to have a peaceful passing on versus?
Besides being
a-
agnostic or atheist?
Oh, I mean, I always said I'm doing things right, but no one believes me. But yeah, yeah.
I would say, if your death is not imminent, if you're not if you have a little bit of time left, it would be to take time to reflect inward and try to connect to the higher wisdom, uh, within yourself, and that helps to bring peace towards the end. I would also suggest one of the things that I help with patients and families is that you live life now, live life today. You don't want to have those regrets. So the regrets are what hold us back and add weight to us at the end of our lives. And finding closure before, say what you need to say. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't let fear dictate how you live your life and just go for it. You will always regret not trying something, but you will never regret failing at it. At least those are what the people on their deathbeds are telling me. So I think that's the best way to have a peaceful life. I mean, death. Well, both.
But well, I mean, one leads to the other. So
Yes.
exactly. And I just had a fucking another. Actually, wait, no, I could think of this one. I know I can. God damn. Oh, well, actually, this is less about death and about more about your A team. Have Do they give you insights into other things besides just the death duel aspect? I mean, do they give you insights into, say, the truth about extraterrestrials? Because this is always a popular thing I have to
Well
ask people who have guides.
well, I have, extraterrestrials on my team, that's part of A team.
Oh
So
shit!
yeah. So, that's at first, they didn't show that to me, and now but you know why they didn't show it to me? Because I didn't have an interest. And so now, I don't know, it's not that I don't have an interest now, it's just but I'm not focusing on it too much, but they're now, I guess, feel like it was safe to show me what they looked like. So I do have, different, beings that are alien on my team. And they come and go. Like, my team of my collective group, they step in, different beings, teachers. I mean, we're all teachers really and students at the same time. They step in and guide me through whatever my challenges are in my life. Perhaps they guide me with a patient who's dying. Perhaps they guide me with a client who's wanting an intuitive reading. Sometimes I see them again. Sometimes I don't. I've got a few that are always there, but yeah, definitely have aliens on the A team.
Aliens at the 18. That's fucking amazing. I love that. I love that word. I love that wording right there. But which I mean, I like it. I like that your team is kind of like any sports team, really. Like you have subs.
Yes,
They need some PTO. They go out for a few days and come back in when they feel like they're ready. Like it's
absolutely.
an interesting concept to compare to.
And you have one
And
too. Yeah, you have your team in spirit and they come and go as you need guidance.
supposedly his name is Anthony, but I have not been able to contact him yet. I've been told his name, but I've tried saying it a bunch of times, but and he's not in the mood to communicate yet, I guess. Maybe I'm not to that point where he feels like he should, but eventually I think he will. I have faith. I have to have faith in that he will. Otherwise, right, buddy? Come on, wherever the hell you are.
Well,
Ooh,
maybe Anthony works through inspiration. Maybe Anthony works through maybe you have a stronger feeling for something. Maybe you aren't gonna see or hear. Maybe it's gonna be a feeling, a knowing, or an inspiration.
yeah, like an intuition type thing, which
Mhm.
mm, sometimes I mean, I don't know. I definitely can do manifestation at times. So I think that kind of ties into it at some point. But I don't know. It'd be nice to actually, be sitting there just smoking a cigarette on my porch and have the dude pop next to me and be like, "What up, man?" If you want, if he wants to look like Jason Mewes, that'd be amazing. But you don't gotta do that, buddy. Just saying that'd be great.
You hear
You
that,
might
Anthony? Requests are being made.
you gotta be the Jada my silent Bob. Come on, dude. But
Do you see how you
yeah,
looked up when you talked to him? You looked
well,
up
yeah.
like the ball of light floating up.
I mean, oh yeah, 'cause that's how I was raised. So I mean, it's kind of just instinct at this point. But what the hell was I gonna? Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask. Well, the fuck was that? But since you do have aliens on your A team, have they ever told you what species they are?
Yes, I have some that have, told me some and then I had to Google it to go look and see what they look like. Because I just have never had an alien interest, but, I guess there's Arcturian, correct me if I'm saying it wrong because I'm really not familiar.
I I actually just had okay, synchronicities are fucking abound tonight. But I literally just had on the return of a previous guest last night. Why am I gonna blank on his name? Oh, Dean Graves. Yeah, Dean Graves. It was his second appearance on my show because he's got a new book coming out. But his first book is actually called Chatting with the Arcturians.
Oh, nice, okay. Well,
So
I have
and
Arcturians and s Ly Lyrans, something like that.
Lyr
One of my
Ly
guides I call Lyra.
Lyrans, yep, Lyrans are,
Lyrans.
if I'm not mistaken, are they the ones that look like lions? I think.
I think they said they were like cat people or something.
Yeah, they're like well, that's why they're called. Lycrans, not Lyrans, Lycrans, because the Lycras, they look like lions. That's why they're called that, or why they let us call them that, I should say, because we don't. They had names before we even existed, so we don't get to make up their names, but that's what they allow us to call them. And see, you're only the third person on this podcast ever to mention Arcturians, so that's phenomenal. I'm hearing that name more and more now, and I mean, yeah, apparently the Arcturians are very wise, from what I've been told. So I
So when I had a reading done, and they didn't know that I call my team a team. That's just just a reading, and I was like, "Well, can you tell me anything about my spirit guides?" And I was hoping they would bring through one of my spirit guides or something, because I already had my own connection. I was looking for validation, and they said, "Okay, yeah, your spirit guides are made up of your ancestors, ascended masters, angelics, Arcturians, and." There was another one, but now I can't remember what it was, but it'll come to me. But anyway, they all start with A, which I thought that she could have used any word choices that she wanted to, but because they all start with A, it related nicely to A
An-
Team. Oh, and
Anunnaki.
alternate dimensional beings was another one.
Oh,
So all these A's, which was just a beautiful way of expressing A Team. It was just a nice little validation.
now you just gotta
Oh,
get
and
the van.
Therians. Is that an alien or no, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
What did you say? I cut you off in the middle of
Syrians?
it. Ethereans? Yeah,
No,
I,
Syrians?
I,
S
I
or there's
was.
one that starts with an S somewhere, see, and that's how into it
Oh,
I am.
I was gonna. I mean, I was gonna ask if the A you were forgetting was Anunnakis, but
Oh, no, that wasn't one. I would have remembered that one.
okay,
Who are they? I have to look
yeah,
them up.
they by legend are with the Palladians what created
Oh,
humans.
Pleiadians, that was another one.
Yeah, Palladians are one of those species I never heard of till I started the show, and now they're one of the most common species I hear about. So apparently they are abound and they are everywhere. But
Okay.
they're but the Palladians and the Anunnaki supposedly are what created humans, or created, guided. No one knows exactly what, but they were there in the early days of humans, and it's I don't know. There's different theories. It would take me another hour to go through them all, but basically, the belief is that they were there to stop the reptilians and other bad species from doing what they want to do with us.
Oh,
So
alright.
they were our
Well, I'm
protectors in a
unfamiliar
way.
with alien history, but I do believe that they exist.
It's all very theoretical and very debated. So, yeah, it's ancient aliens is a whole nother topic. But uh,
Hi. Hi, baby. Oh, who's that?
that would be Snickers.
Snickers, that's a great name.
Hey, buddy. Oh, you want him back in his? Oh, I can have him. Thank you, my new podcast mascot. But so I've because it's cute, so it gets me ratings. Tricks of the trade, my dear. Tricks of the trade. Yeah, ancient aliens is a whole nother topic basically, and they're all very varied. I've spent so many hours on the show discussing it. I don't like to go too deep into it, but so why don't you tell my listeners where they could find you if they're interested in your services, where they could find your book, just promote yourself to the fullest.
Sure. My book is on Amazon. It's called Healing Whispers from Spirit Guides, Bridging the Life and the Afterlife with the Death Doula's Wisdom. So, Healing Whispers from Spirit Guides is in Kindle, paperback, or audiobook. And my website is www.helengretchenjones.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, there you go, listeners. Of course, those links will be put, or at least some of those links will be put into the description of the podcast, so you guys can just click and go, as always. And I want to thank Gretchen, for coming on. It's been freaking phenomenal. It's been an amazing discussion, and we don't get to talk about death on this show too much. I mean, with the NDEers every once in a while, yeah, but it's not a topic we go to on the show a lot because just there's not a lot of experts in it. Because those who are experts in it already passed and can't talk to
Well,
me.
shared death experiencers are, an area that's underexplored, and I encourage everyone to try to become one themselves.
Yes, yep. It definitely is something that needs to be explored more. I will agree with that. I honestly don't know if it's something I could do. I feel
Just be
like I
open
don't
to
know.
it. Just
I mean, I know. I feel like I could do it. I just don't know if I mentally and emotionally can handle it. I feel like that's where the strength is. Like you have to have mental, emotional strength to do that, and to be around death that much that brings anybody down. I would think. I would think, but then again, I listen to freaking rap music about people killing each other, so I don't freaking know. I don't know. But you guys all know where to find me. If you don't by now, check your local asylum. But check the outro, and you might. If you don't know, it's all there, as you know. Shame for not knowing already. And I will be back on Sunday with a double header, 2 episodes Sunday morning. You're welcome. But I'm gonna need coffee. But until then, have a good one. Have a good night, everybody, and enjoy the beginning of your weekend. Have a good one.